Ladies and gentlemen, here at the Sports Bros Podcast, I'm not going to say ladies and gentlemen, everybody listening to the Sports Bros Podcast, come close, come close, come close. You're probably expecting the choices of the voices, but nah, not this week. We have a guest. That's right. We have a very special guest. He is sports agent extraordinaire, Joel Turner. Joel, thanks for joining us on this episode of the Sports Bros Podcast.
It's my pleasure, but I don't consider myself a guest. I'm family with Scott, so that'll work.
Okay, well, you're family then. You are family. Yeah, thanks for Scott D for making this happen. And it is a pleasure to have you here with us here, Joel, at the Sports Bros Podcast. You know, we just, as you can see, we just three guys talking sports, you know, and just trying to get by every day. But having a real life, actual working sports agent is awesome because before you
don't get too carried away now. Don't get too carried away.
Yeah, because before we hit record button, you was like, you know what, phone's been blowing up. So
it has been. It's been a busy day, but that's to be expected. Less than 2 weeks to the draft.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of, in the words of Rick Flair, a whole lot of wheeling and dealing and negotiating going on. All right.
Very soon.
Yeah, very soon. Very soon. All right, Joel. Could you tell us briefly a little bit about your background and how you got to start the business as an agent?
Sure. My brother Justin Turner and I own Turner Sports Management, and we've been in business for, God, it hurts to say, this will be 23 years. So getting old. But prior to that, I was in college football as a coach and college administration and coaching straight out of Wofford after I finished there a long time ago. And after 8 years of it, to be perfectly frank, I got kind of tired of what I got to, a daily dose of seeing. And that business has gotten worse, not better, just like ours has, as many others over the years. And, I knew when I was a kid, long time ago, I wanted to live at the beach one day. Never dreamed I'd be in this line of work. God just opened up a door that I certainly didn't count on by no means. And at the time, one of the assistant coaches at Clemson, when I was on the staff there, told me, he said, our defense coordinator had left and gone to Alabama, and Reggie Herring, who just recently had been linebackers coach with the Denver Broncos for, I guess, about the last decade or so. Reggie asked me, he said, have you thought about being an agent? And at that time, I really had thought about going back and coaching high school football. I really did. I was like, college gaming and getting all it cracked up to be, and I would get some summers off and state retirement. And, a lot of college coaches bounce from job to job, and it's really hard on those guys to put any type of retirement together whatsoever. And so, I went back to school, thought I might get a second master's degree and get my teaching certification. And it took me all of about 6 days of student teaching to figure out there was no way that was going to be in my future for the next 25 to 30 years. And so I thought back to Reggie's advice and went through all the proper paperwork, and then had to go through the, at that time, there literally was no anything but paperwork. There were no tests. There was nothing required of anybody to be an NFLPA agent. And of course, as soon as I decided to be one, they started a pretty rigorous program to do a certification process. And so I went through that, had to go to Washington, D.C. and go through a pretty extensive 2-day seminar and pass a test. And then, of course, annually now we have to certify. But that was the first year they had ever made agents do anything to be an agent. Other than that, all you had to do was say you were one and sign somebody to a contract that made you an agent. So to me, I think the process is much better now than it was. It at least filters out some unqualified people, although I hate to say it, some do sneak through the cracks still. If they can pass the test, technically they're a certified agent, but that doesn't always qualify everybody. I guess same thing's true for the bar license with attorneys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Like you said, some that don't need to be there slip through, but that's how it is with any line of work almost. If you think about it.
So you have to do that every year though. That's something you have to annually do. Is it the same every year, or is it the exact same process for you as it would be for somebody starting off?
No, the starting off process is something where they have to pass the same type of exam I had to 23 years ago, back in 1999. But annually, we have to go through continuing education, a lot like attorneys, real estate agents, et cetera.
Okay.
And then the certification process exists on, there had been a biannual recertification test. They suspended it for COVID. Not sure if they'll bring it back or not, but for experienced agents, and I say that, and that's not really true. because one experienced agent, highly experienced agent, he failed the recertification test. And he'd been in the business for 20 years and had a lot of successful clients, but obviously let some things lapse, in a mental capacity of remembering what he was supposed to do and not do.
Huh. Interesting.
Wow. Yeah. I guess that really shows you really got to be on top of your top on top of everything.
You should be, in the best interest of your clients. But, like we said, there's some folks out there not qualified in every line of work. Like Don Rickles said a long time ago, he goes, hey, in every town, somebody's the worst doctor and he's got a room full of patients tomorrow morning. That's in this line of work. They don't just come to you. You have to recruit your clients. That process can be a little arduous, but by the same token, we've been very fortunate that we've had a lot of really good players come our way and decide to allow us to represent them and serve as their official NFLPA agents. And, in that capacity, that's how we make a living. So without the clients, you can't do anything. So they're the basis of the entire industry. Without the players, none of it's possible.
Yeah, can you share with us some of your more like high profile names that our listeners would know?
Several guys that I would imagine over the years, some now have moved on toward, into retirement. And by the same token, we do have some active players that I would imagine football fans would know by name. Ryan Succop is a kicker at Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was the highest paid kicker in the NFL last year at the start of the season. Been in the league for, which is hard to believe, 14 years as Mr. Irrelevant as the last of the 2009 draft, and had a whale of a career and won the Super Bowl just in the 2020 season with Tampa Bay. Cole Beasley is an active free agent who has had a 10-year career in the league between the Dallas Cowboys and the Buffalo Bills. Yes, exactly, for the Cowboys. And he's a Texas native, but Cole is in free agency at the moment. And as far as some of the other players that have been noted over the years, Ryan Clark was a household name for 13 years with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Washington Redskins, which are no longer the Redskins, as we all politically know. And he had quite a career himself as an undrafted free agent and won a Super Bowl, played in another, started in another, two-time Pro Bowler. Mike Tolbert, three-time Pro Bowl fullback, running back with the Carolina Panthers out of coastal Carolina. Mike had a really nice career. Mike had the second most negotiated contract money in the history of the NFL for a fullback. Only Lorenzo Neal got more money in his career at fullback than Mike Tolbert has.
Wow.
And I do believe that the young man out at San Francisco will pass them both probably the next year or so, Jusic. But Mike had a nice career to be a walk-on from a 1AA program that was a startup. So, we've been pretty fortunate to have some guys that have done very well over the years. And, we just got to keep working hard just like we all do.
I got a question for you that leads into this, because as far as like recruiting players, finding players, putting your name out there. Now with the NIL deal in NCAA, has your agency tapped into that at all?
We have not. That's now here in South Carolina, and I've spoken with the people that are in charge of the state licensing and some other folks in the media and the legal world. According to what I've read and been told, although I haven't seen the documents myself, because since we don't really deal with it that much, I haven't wanted to take that much of my time to truly look at all the actual legalese of it. But the South Carolina NIL law that was passed just July, which has not even been 10 months ago yet, is going to be repealed with the passage of the new state budget, which should take effect sometime this coming month in May. So basically, it's going to be hands off. It's going to be no holds barred. You'll be able to do anything you want to do. The NCAA has the rule says in NCAA that you're not supposed to sign to play, pay to play. I think we all know that's fallacy at best. And with what's going on, what that means for agents, agents will no longer have to be licensed in order to do NIL deals. You still will have to, by state law, be licensed to be an athlete agent. Unfortunately, there are people in the world who don't do that. There are people of celebrity who have taken part in working with sports agencies that are not licensed. There are, and I'm not pulling your leg, there's a convicted felon right now actively who is going around recruiting players on behalf of agents. And some players in this year's draft have even been foolish enough, I've been told, to have listed the convicted felon, who is not an agent of any kind, as their agent for the teams to call on draft day.
God.
So, Yeah, it can get a little interesting in this line of work now and then. And if that were an attorney or a doctor, even I would imagine a real estate agent. If somebody pulled something like that, I would think that the people in charge of licensing and enforcement law would be, as they say, all over them. But we'll have to see how this thing works out.
Jesus, that just seems that's scary for 18, 19. I mean, it's going as far back as
they're draft eligible players that have affiliated with a convicted felon. But and I'm not talking about just, pardon my way of putting this, a run-of-the-mill felon. I'm talking about somebody who's a convicted felon who was actually arrested, pled guilty to trying to, I'm just going to call it, defraud potential investors out of approximately $20 million. And some of those investors were pro athletes. And so this guy's allegedly right back at it again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. And for the high school kids, I hate to say it, but those kinds of people can present themselves as a sports marketing agent in a lot of states. And there's literally nothing out there to provide protection to these high school and now college kids, such as, in our state, we have the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs, and their job is to protect the consumers of South Carolina, the citizens. Hopefully to protect them from unscrupulous activities in any number arrays of business. And once that law is repealed, there won't be anything out there to protect people legally from people trying to purportedly be NIL agents. So it could be a very, very bad situation.
Sounds like the Wild Wild West almost.
Exactly.
And this is what those high profile coaches, Dabo Swinney being one of them, was warning the public about when it came to NIL.
Dabo's taking some heat over his comments from, people in the public, be it fans and some media and so on. But I truly believe, knowing Coach Swinney, that he truly has the players' interest at heart, their best interest at heart. He's not trying to limit any player's ability to do something for their own betterment. He's really wanting something in place to protect those players even more.
So I'm one of his biggest advocates. All roads lead to Dabo. That is an official hashtag.
I have a lot of respect for Coach Swinney.
Oh yes, and so our executive producer, head of creative over there, he doesn't have as much of an affinity because he's a Gamecock fan. So
that's all right.
I mean, as 8 years in a row, I had to.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. let me ask.
How quickly they forget. Right?
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, 2013. I'll never forget that day. Yeah. I will never forget the picture. All of it.
As a Wofford College grad, I don't really have any affinity for either one in reality, despite the fact that I was at Clemson for a little while on the staff. But, I hope they both do very well every year.
Let me ask you more of a serious question here. Let me be the one that Amtrak's here for a moment. I know this has got to be a real busy time for you on the horizon. We're less than 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. A lot of your players are guys that have to really fight and make teams. They're undrafted free agents. So what's that process for you? Like sitting through the course of a weekend, trying to keep your players, making contacts for your players, finding them teams, and also, I know you have a couple potential draftees this year that you're kind of excited about.
We have some players more than worthy of being drafted. We have a quarterback that was a combine invitee. He's a 2-time National Player of the Year at the FCS, what we used to call 1AA level. He was a 4-star signee out of Louisiana, actually at Arkansas in the SEC. Turned down a boatload of SEC West and I would say Conference USA type, Louisiana Techs and so forth type schools. But he was a 4-star recruit at Arkansas. Went there to play for Chad Morris, formerly of Clemson. Unfortunately, the Chad Morris experience didn't work out well, nor did the Chad Morris experiment work out well. And so, Arkansas is now on their second coach since Coach Morris, but he transferred back home to Southeast Louisiana, which has only had a team about, I think, 12 to 14 years since they reinstituted it from the 50s. And as a 2-time All-American and a 2-time National Player of the Year, he leaves Southeast Louisiana as the NCAA's all-time leading percentage passing completion. He's a career 73%. Also had a single season high record of 74.7 or 9, I believe, right at 75%. He threw for over 5,000 yards, 44 touchdowns against 10 interceptions. And to go with it, he just happens to be 6'7", 250. And he also ran for 16 touchdowns and didn't do them all as 1-yard plunges. He was just shy of 500 yards rushing. So at 6'7", 250, he almost ran for as many yards as both the draft eligible running backs from the University of South Carolina this year, and had more touchdowns than they did combined. And that's as a quarterback. And so young man's name is Cole Kelly. We fully expect him to be a draft pick. I'm not, no telling when, where, by whom, but he certainly is a very talented young man, has a unique skill set. And he looks, his playing style, physical stature, he really looks like a combination of a Ben Roethlisberger, Josh Allen type of a quarterback. And like I said, he's a legit player, all the way up the ladder. He's not a guy who started out at a 1AA school and just blossomed into somebody like you might see, many years past. But this young man's got a tremendous set of tools. Now, to go along with him, my brother Justin also signed the nation's leading receiver in every category. Jarrett Stearns, wide receiver at Western Kentucky that transferred there from 1AA, Houston Baptist, which is in the same conference Cole Kelly is coming out of, in the Southland Conference. And Jarrett led the nation in receptions with 150, yards with over 1,900, and 17 touchdowns. You do those numbers in the NFL and you'll get 35 in a year. So he had a marvelous season. At his pro day recently, as a 5'8", 182-pound receiver, he verticaled 40 inches. He is athletic. He's explosive. He is an extremely bright young man. And his brother is actually a starting safety for the Denver Broncos, who was in the draft last year. So the pedigree from family-wise is tremendous as well.
That's awesome. Those are guys we're going to be definitely rooting for. I mean,
well,
we want to see them get picked.
To give you an idea what the scouting community of the NFL is like, I don't hold them all in disregard, but I'm not going to tell you different. They hold some of us in some disregard, and the shoe also goes on the other foot. How does a young man who leads the nation in every single receiving category not even get invited to the combine?
It's a good question.
It is a good question.
Wow.
Yes.
So these guys, I'm sure somebody knows who they are, though. I mean, these are guys I'm sure are going to be sleepers under the radar.
Yeah, they'll be
guys.
considered that. Both Jarrett Stearns and Cole Kelly have mentions in the pre. I'm gonna call them the pre-draft magazines. Athlon, Sporting News, et cetera. They've got mentions in there as prospects for being drafted, or if not, certainly high priority free agents is the term for the guys that are the very first undrafted players the teams tend to go after. But along with those young men, we also have some guys that come from other schools that some people will recognize, some won't. A few years ago, we represented a young man, which ended up getting to play until he was an old man. Ron Parker was a 5-year starter at free safety at Kansas City Chiefs, went to five playoffs in a row out there. And he actually started more games at safety than Eric Berry did, and did that out of Newberry College. And, we have another Newberry graduate this year, David Vereen. He's a tremendous corner. He's 5'9.5", just shy of 190 pounds. He's got 33-inch arms, which is ridiculous on a 5'9" frame. And he's a legitimate 4.4 speed guy. He's got 35, 36 passes defended at Newberry over the last 2 years. Now, keep in mind, that's 35 pass breakups and essentially just a little over 2 seasons, since they really didn't get to have a 20 season. And, with COVID. So between 19 not playing in 20 and 21, he's got quite a resume, to be perfectly honest with you. His coverage skills are just tremendous.
So, Joel, when the draft ends, you have a guy like that.
Right.
There's going to be some the teams that are interested in him. Do you lobby to these teams, or do they reach out to you and say, we want to invite this guy to our camp? Like, how does that work?
Best way I know to describe it is a lot of dual politicking going on. They'll actually call the agents and the players and try to start recruiting them per se. They do realize that plenty of players go undrafted that are highly qualified. Right now, I think a little over 1/3 of the league, 1 out of every 3 players in the NFL right now, entered the league undrafted. So
wow.
you're talking about a pool of players that are very important. A lot of, every team realizes how important it is. Some teams get it better than others. And then, of course, that's why you have so much coaching changeover. And so, the ones that don't get it right, they'll have somebody else will get that opportunity.
Right. Yeah.
It happens every year to the tune of 6, 7, 8, 9 teams every year. But we don't purposely, intentionally recruit guys. We say, oh, that guy's going to go undrafted. Let's go recruit him. We like to recruit young men based on the type of character, work ethic, intelligence, type of families they come from, how important football is to them, if it truly means something. And to go along with that, we want to make sure those are the type of young men that if our name is affixed to them, there's certainly not going to be anyone we would have any regrets saying we represent so-and-so because, they've been a bad guy or done something wrong or what have you. Over the course of the years, we've had a scant few that have had any type of issues, legally. We've represented almost 250 players over the last 22 years, and we've been fortunate that we've only had 4 arrests in 22 years, over 250 guys. And, hate to say it, 3 of the 4 were DUIs. And, that hasn't happened in a long, long time because the players, thanks to the league and the union, truthfully, society in general, there's a much bigger push for people to understand that there are plenty of opportunities otherwise to get around if you're going to drink. And with the advent of Uber and Lyft, and of course the NFL and the PA combined, they have a program to assist any player, any place they are, to get them where they need to be. So, we haven't had that issue a whole lot.
Yeah, well, that's good. Speaking of families, what are, like, as far as you meet clients, you meet different people, like what is the relationship between the agent and the client's family?
Well, to an extent, some players want their family members involved, immediate, such as mom, dad, brothers, sisters. Others want some of the more extended family involved, whether it's a cousin or an aunt, uncle. But when it comes down to it, these are grown men. Even though they're leaving college, people think they're kids, they're grown men. We represent a number of married players, and of course their wives and their family come first. And so we always want to make sure that the entire family is involved, unless the client just wants it to be a one-on-one type of relationship. And of course, it's different for everybody. And so there's no one template, recipe that's going to go for everybody.
All right. And that is wonderful thing. Family first is definitely something that we definitely agree on. I want to say this though. It's a business. And at the end of the day, the business is, I'm quoting Jerry Maguire, I feel it, show me the money.
Yes.
And I gotta ask, because you manage a lot of the sports, so you do a lot of negotiation with the contracts with the teams.
Mm-hmm.
Do you also represent the player as far as off the field deals, sponsorships and stuff like that? Or is it directly just on the field?
A number of those over the years. We've been very fortunate that the players have asked us to do some of those deals. And whether it's shoe deals, whether it's commercials, whether it's car deals, or CARD deals versus vehicles, Topps, Panini, Upper Deck, Fleer, et cetera. Shoe deals, we've been fortunate to do about anything anybody can do. By the same token, and also helping players with media type situations. So we've done about a little bit of everything, just like anybody in this business been around long enough has. But our primary function is the negotiation of an NFL player contract for the client. We don't try to sell ourselves as marketing agents. There are people who do specialize in that, and we have at times told clients based on their standing, you need a full-time marketing agent because we're also handling negotiations contractually for a number of other players. And you do what you're good at, and we're plenty good at the media thing, but that's not how we make our living. Doing the promotions, endorsements, signings, et cetera. And truthfully, we very rarely charge players for doing those. There's been a little bit of money in it, but for the most part, we've just done it more or less pro bono for those guys so that they understand that we're trying to do something good for them as well.
So how do you generally get paid? Is it in a contract? Like, Is it part of the team paid contract, and then you get a percentage of what?
If the NFL and NFLPA would get together and just take our percentage out of their checks and send it to us every week, that would be awesome. It doesn't work that way.
Gotcha.
I wish it would. There's really no reason why it shouldn't, but we have to actually send out invoices, just like any business does to somebody who's got, money owed to them, accounts receivable, if you will. So, about once a month or so, we'll send an invoice to the players for what they've been paid at that point.
Ever have any problems with them? You ever got to lay down the hammer and say, "Give me my money, man"? Or are they usually pretty good about it?
We have not really had the guys, and again, that goes to the type of people you represent. So, we've been very fortunate. That's just never been an issue.
Would an invoice, would that be a percentage of what they made? Something that you negotiate?
Yes, it's the NFLPA has a maximum percentage commission of 3% of the contracts you negotiate.
Okay. You essentially just send it as a monthly bill as long as you represent them, their contracts.
Correct. And as well, there is one noted agent in our line of work who has been known to, let's just say, have players switch representation to him from other agents. And as long as a player is playing on a contract that an agent has negotiated, they owe that agent the money for the job they have done. If they leave agent A and go to agent B has to get the player a new contract that supersedes any contract they're under with the first agent in order to get paid.
Wow. Okay.
Some of that cutthroat stuff there.
Yeah.
Huh?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that does make sense. Who was/is your most unique client that you've ever came across or dealt with?
Oh, Lord, unique.
Uh-oh.
I don't want to zero anybody in or out on that, but I don't have kids, so I don't understand the concept of, we don't have any favorites, we love them all. We appreciate every single person we have, and every one of them have helped us have a ability to pay our bills and provide for our families. For me personally, my closest personal relationships are the guys that we really started this thing with, being Ryan Clark, that signed with us a long time ago and stayed with us the duration of his entire career. And you now see Ryan almost daily on ESPN. And to go along with him, Mike Tolbert and Quentin Teal and Tyler Thigpen, all three of them came out of Coastal Carolina together. And Mike was a second-year player out of Coastal. And, there are so many others, so many incredible stories. Anthony Toribio's a young man from Carson Newman College that I don't think anybody thought could play in the NFL. And he got 6 years and got a nice retirement and put himself ahead in this world and gave himself a whole lot better standing than I think he would have ever gotten, in a normal world. And there are just so many stories like those guys that again, I don't want to single anybody out, but those guys were early guys. Those guys were 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6 that, we literally built the foundation of this company on that has enabled us to be able to have some tremendous success over the years. And representing Patrick DeMarco out of South Carolina that nobody really thought was going to be a big time player, but he played 10 years and he was named All-Pro into the Pro Bowl twice and started in the Super Bowl. And we have another young man that played for years with the Atlanta Falcons named Ryan Schrader. Ryan is, I don't know what he weighs today. I think he's down to about 235, but Ryan was 6'7", 310 playing right tackle for the Falcons. And he was named a 2-time All-Pro. And he came out of Valdosta State, undrafted. And the interesting thing about him is when he was in high school as a senior, he was 5'9", 165 pounds. And
wow.
In a 30-month period, he grew to 6'7". And so he literally started playing football at age 19.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, Joel, you guys got any more questions?
And just before we let you go, at least one guy in this little chat room is a big USFL fan. You get any action going with there now? There's more options. Any negotiation with those guys?
There is no negotiation in that process. They say, do you want to play for $4,000 a week? And if you do, come on. And if you don't, go.
He said, "Come on, come on."
That's about how that league's working right now.
$4,000 a week.
I think that's about the ballpark. It might be a little more than that. It may be 45, what have you.
Let me get back in shape.
I hear you. I promise you, those dudes playing for those teams are not terrible by no means.
Right.
No, not terrible. Once again, Joel Turner, thank you for joining us here on the Sports Bros podcast.
Thank you.
Yes, Joel, we thank you. We appreciate you so much. And you come back anytime.
Nice to talk to some fellow South Carolinians and a transplant wannabe.
That's right.
I got you.
And we'll be rooting for Jared and Cole Kelly. Was Jared Stearns his last name?
Yes.
Jared Stearns will be rooting for him and Cole Kelly next weekend in the NFL draft, and we wish you the best. And thank you for taking time, Joel. I know you're a busy man. We really appreciate it.
So much.
Once again, thank you. Go ahead, Bill. I was about to say.
I was like, maybe one day we can go to the NFL draft and witness it in person. The Sports Bros podcast.
I'm to deal with that mess.
Joel's like, let me be over here to comfort my own home on my phone.
Exactly.
Oh wow.
We've got enough to deal with on our own without having to do all that mess.
Got you.
Joel with 2 phones. Joel, thank you. Turner Sports Incorporated. Joel Turner, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Sports Bros podcast.